Have you ever looked at your life and quietly said to yourself, tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow I'll wake up early. Tomorrow I'll start exercising. Tomorrow I'll practice English. Tomorrow I'll stop wasting time. Tomorrow I'll become the person I want to be. But then tomorrow arrives and somehow nothing changes. One day becomes 1 week. 1 week becomes 1 month. Before you know it, another year has passed, and you're standing in the same place, asking yourself the same question. Why can't I stay consistent? If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. Millions of people have dreams. They dream of speaking English confidently. They dream of getting healthier. They dream of earning more money. They dream of building a better future. But dreams alone don't change lives. Something else does. It's called discipline.
Not the loud, strict kind you see in movies, but the quiet kind. The kind that helps you do the right thing even when no one is watching. Today, I don't want to give you another motivational speech. Instead, I want to tell you a story. Because sometimes one simple story can teach us more than 100 pieces of advice.
Why motivation isn't enough. Meet Daniel. Daniel wasn't lazy. He wasn't careless. In fact, he wanted to improve his life more than anything. Every new year, he made a promise to himself. Hopeful? This year will be different. He walked into a bookstore and bought a beautiful notebook. Its pages were perfectly white. It felt like a fresh start. When he got home, he downloaded 2 English learning apps. He watched videos about success. He created a colorful study timetable and carefully stuck it on the wall beside his desk. Everything was ready. On the first morning, Daniel woke up early with a smile. He studied English for 30 minutes. He learned new words. He practiced speaking out loud.
For the first time in a long time, he felt proud of himself. The second day was just as good. The third day felt even better. He thought, maybe this time I'm really going to change. But on the fourth day, he came home feeling tired. I'll study tomorrow, he told himself. One day didn't seem like a big deal. The next day, he was busy. The day after that, he wanted to relax. Soon, tomorrow became next week. Next week became next month. One evening, Daniel noticed the notebook lying quietly under a pile of books. The timetable was still hanging on the wall. The English apps were still on his phone. Nothing had disappeared. Only his excitement had. Every time he looked at that notebook, he felt a little disappointed. Not because he couldn't learn English, but because he had broken another promise to himself. Maybe you've had your own version of Daniel's story. Maybe it wasn't English. Maybe it was exercise, reading, saving money, learning a new skill, or simply becoming more organized. The beginning always feels exciting. Everything seems possible. But then life becomes busy. Energy disappears, excitement fades away, and suddenly the dream begins to fade with it. Here's the surprising part. Daniel's biggest problem wasn't a lack of intelligence. It wasn't a lack of talent. And it certainly wasn't a lack of dreams. His biggest problem was relying on motivation. Motivation is a wonderful feeling. It makes us excited to begin. But motivation is like the weather. Some days it's bright and sunny. Other days it's cold, rainy, and completely gone. If you only work when you feel motivated, you'll only make progress on your best days. But real success isn't built on your best days. It's built on the ordinary days. The days when you're tired. The days when you don't feel like doing anything. The days when no one is cheering for you. That's where discipline begins. Discipline quietly says, do it anyway. It doesn't ask you to be perfect. It simply asks you to keep
Going. One page, one lesson, one workout, one small step. Again and again. Because success rarely comes from one big decision. It grows from hundreds of small decisions that almost nobody notices. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. How one tiny promise, repeated every single day, can completely change the direction of your life. Part 2. The Small Promise. What happened to Daniel isn't unusual. In fact, it happens to millions of people every single day. Most of us don't fail because we dream too little. Thoughtfully, we fail because we try to change everything at once. We tell ourselves, from tomorrow, I'll wake up at 5. I'll exercise every day. I'll study English for 2 hours. I'll stop using social media. I'll eat healthy. It's an impressive plan, but it's also exhausting. After just a few days, the pressure becomes too much. Slowly, we return to our old habits. Then we blame ourselves. But maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe the problem is trying to change your whole life overnight. Let me tell you another story. Her name was Emma. Emma dreamed of speaking English confidently. She imagined herself traveling to different countries. She imagined having conversations without fear. She imagined applying for a better job. But every evening after work, she felt tired. Whenever she thought about studying for an hour, she would quietly say, "I'll start tomorrow." Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Her dream stayed exactly where it was. One evening, she made a different decision. Instead of asking herself to study for an hour, she made one tiny promise. I'll study English for just 10 minutes. Only 10 minutes. No pressure, no perfect timetable, no impossible goals. Just 10 minutes. The next day, she kept her promise. She opened her notebook, read one page, learned a few new words. Then she stopped. She felt proud. Not because she had studied for a long time, but because she had kept her promise. The following day, she did it again and again. Some days, she studied for only 10 minutes. Other days, she became so interested that 10 minutes turned into 30. Sometimes it became a full hour. But she never forced herself. She simply showed up. A few months later, something amazing happened. Her English improved. She understood more. She spoke with greater confidence. People started noticing the difference. They asked, "How did you improve so quickly?" The truth was, she didn't improve quickly. She improved consistently. That's the difference. Big changes rarely happen in one dramatic moment. They happen quietly. One small promise. One ordinary day. Repeated again and again. There's another reason this works. Every time Emma kept her promise, she wasn't just learning English. She was becoming someone who keeps promises. At first, she thought, "I want to learn English." After a few weeks,
her thinking changed. She began saying, "I'm someone who studies every day." Do you see the difference? The first sentence describes a dream. The second describes an identity. And our identity shapes our actions. If you believe you're someone who always gives up, you'll probably stop when things become difficult. But if you believe you're someone who finishes what they start, you'll find a way to keep going. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to become the kind of person who returns, even after missing a day. Because everyone misses a day. Everyone gets tired. Everyone loses motivation. Discipline doesn't mean never failing. It means never letting one bad day become a bad week. It means starting again. Again and again. You don't have to change your whole life. You only need one small promise. One promise you know you can keep. Maybe it's reading one page. Maybe it's learning 5 new English words. Maybe it's practicing for 10 minutes before bed. It doesn't matter how small the step is. What matters is taking it. Because every time you keep that promise, you're doing more than building a habit. You're building trust in yourself. And once you trust yourself, everything begins to change. But if keeping a small promise is so powerful, why do we still choose comfort over progress? Why does checking our phones feel easier than chasing our dreams? To answer that, we need to understand the invisible battle happening inside our minds every single day. Part 3. The invisible battle. If you've ever picked up your phone to check one message and then looked up 30 minutes later, wondering where the time went, you're not alone. If you've ever promised yourself, "I'll start after one more video," only to realize an hour has disappeared, you're not alone. And if you've ever chosen a warm bed over an early morning alarm, believe me, you're definitely not alone. It's easy to think this happens because we're weak, but that's not the truth. Our brains are simply doing what they've been designed to do. They naturally look for comfort. They try to save energy. They prefer what's easy today instead of what's better tomorrow. Imagine your mind as a small child standing at a crossroads. On one side is a slice of chocolate cake. On the other side is an English textbook. The child doesn't stop to think about the future. It reaches for the cake, not because it's bad, but because it wants what feels good right now. In many ways, our brains work the same way. They love quick rewards, scrolling through social media, watching another episode, sleeping for 10 more minutes. These things feel good immediately. But discipline speaks with a different voice. It's calm, it's quiet, and it says, "Not now. The reward will come later." That voice isn't loud. In fact, it's often so quiet that we hardly notice it. The voice of comfort usually shouts. The voice of discipline usually whispers. That's why discipline can feel difficult. Every day, those two voices compete for your attention. One says, "Skip today's practice. You deserve a break." The other says, "Just 10 minutes. You'll thank yourself tomorrow." One promises comfort. The other promises growth. The strange thing is this: comfort feels wonderful in the moment, but it often leaves us feeling disappointed later. Discipline feels uncomfortable in the moment, but it usually brings peace and pride afterward. Think about the last time you finished something you didn't feel like doing. Maybe you exercised. Maybe you studied. Maybe you cleaned your room or completed an important task. At the beginning, it probably felt difficult. But when you finished, how did you feel? Gentle smile. Most likely, you felt proud. Not because the task was exciting, but because you proved something to yourself. You proved that your feelings don't always have to make your decisions. And that's one of the greatest lessons in life. You don't have to feel ready before you begin. Action often comes first. Motivation often follows. Many people wait until they feel inspired. Disciplined people simply begin. They don't ask, do I feel like it today? They ask, what's the next small step? That simple question changes everything, because big goals can feel overwhelming. But one small step? Almost anyone can take one small step. One sentence, one page, one conversation, one workout, one promise kept. And every time you choose that small step over comfort, something inside you becomes stronger. Not overnight, not in a week, but little by little, day after day. You begin to realize that discipline isn't a punishment. It's a gift. It gives you freedom. Freedom from excuses. Freedom from regret. Freedom from always saying, I'll start tomorrow. The battle inside your mind never completely disappears. Even successful people hear the voice of comfort. The difference is that they don't let it make every decision. They've learned to listen to the quieter voice. The voice that says, keep going. One more step. Don't give up today. And when those small steps are repeated again and again, something remarkable begins to happen. The changes may seem invisible at first, but over time, they become impossible to ignore. That's the quiet power of consistency. And in the next part, you'll discover how improving by just 1% each day can completely transform your life. Part 4. The compound effect. Imagine planting a tiny seed in your garden. The next morning, you walk outside and look at the ground. Nothing. The day after that, still nothing. A week later, it seems as if nothing is happening at all. Most people would stop watering it. They would think the seed isn't growing. But beneath the surface, something incredible is taking place. Tiny roots are spreading through the soil. The growth is invisible. Yet it's happening every single day. Our lives work in exactly the same way. The small things we do every day often seem too small to matter. Reading one page, learning 5 new English words, taking a short walk, saving a little money, practicing for 10 minutes. One day doesn't change your life. Neither does 1 week. But months later, everything begins to look different. Let me tell you 3 short stories. The first is about a student. Every evening before bed, he read just 2 pages of an English book. Only 2 pages. His friends laughed. What difference can 2 pages make? He smiled and kept reading. At first, he understood very little. Some sentences were difficult. Some words were completely new. But every day, reading became a little easier. 6 months later, he noticed something surprising. He no longer translated every sentence in his head. He was beginning to think in English. The second story is about an athlete. She didn't try to become the strongest person in the gym on her first day. Instead, she focused on one simple goal: become just a little better than yesterday. One extra push-up, one extra minute of running, one small improvement. Some days the progress was almost impossible to see, but she kept showing up. A year later, people called her disciplined. What they didn't see were the hundreds of ordinary days that made her extraordinary. The third story is about a young musician. The first time he played the piano, it didn't sound beautiful. His fingers moved slowly. He made mistakes. Sometimes he wanted to quit. But every evening, he practiced for a short time. One song.
One lesson. One improvement. Years later, people applauded his performances. They called him talented. But they hadn't seen the thousands of quiet moments when nobody was watching.
These three people had different dreams. One wanted knowledge, one wanted strength, one wanted music. But they all shared the same secret. They trusted small progress. They understood something many people forget. Success isn't usually one giant leap. It's thousands of tiny steps taken in the same direction. Think about water falling onto a rock. One drop changes nothing. 10 drops change nothing. Even 100 drops seem useless. But over time, those tiny drops can shape solid stone. Not because they're powerful, because they're consistent. That's exactly how discipline works. You don't become confident after one English lesson. You don't become healthy after one workout. You don't become successful after one good day. You become those things by repeating small actions until they become part of who you are. This is called the compound effect. Small actions, repeated consistently, creating extraordinary results. The beautiful part is that anyone can begin. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need expensive equipment. You don't need to wait until Monday, next month, or the new year. You only need today's decision. One page, one conversation, one workout, one promise. It may not look important today, but never underestimate a small action repeated hundreds of times. Because one day, someone will look at your progress and ask, "How did you do it?" And you'll know the answer. Not with one big moment, but with countless small moments that nobody noticed. So the real question isn't, what can I achieve in one day? The better question is, what kind of life could I build if I kept one small promise every day for the next year? The answer might surprise you. And the best part is, you don't have to guess. You can start finding out today. In the next and final part, let's turn these ideas into something practical with a simple daily discipline routine that almost anyone can follow. Part 5. A simple daily discipline routine. By now, you might be thinking, this all sounds inspiring, but where do I actually begin? That's a great question, because discipline doesn't grow through big speeches. It grows through small daily actions. The good news is that you don't need to change your entire life tomorrow. In fact, I hope you don't. Trying to change everything at once is one of the fastest ways to give up. Instead, let's build a simple routine. Not a perfect routine. A warm one. One that almost anyone can follow. Let's begin with the morning. When you wake up, resist the temptation to pick up your phone immediately. Those first few minutes of your day are powerful. They set the tone for everything that follows. Instead, make your bed. It takes less than 2 minutes. It's a small task, but it's also your first victory of the day. Then, drink a glass of water.
Your body has been resting for hours. Give it the energy it needs. Now, before the world becomes noisy, spend just 5 or 10 minutes reading one page in English. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is consistency. Imagine starting every morning by telling yourself, "Today, I kept my first promise." That's a powerful feeling. As the day continues, life becomes busy. Work demands your attention. Family responsibilities appear. Messages arrive. Notifications never seem to stop. This is where discipline is tested. Before opening social media, before watching another short video, choose one important task. Just one. Maybe it's finishing a piece of work. Maybe it's practicing English. Maybe it's replying to an important email. Complete that one task first, then enjoy your break. You'll notice something interesting. Relaxing feels much better when you've already accomplished something meaningful. Now let's talk about the evening. This is the perfect time to reflect. Spend 10 or 15 minutes with English. Learn 5 new words or expressions. Read a short article. Listen to a short podcast. Or write 3 simple sentences about your day. For example, today I felt busy. I learned something new. Tomorrow I'll practice again. Don't worry about making mistakes. Every sentence you write is another step forward. Before you go to sleep, ask yourself one simple question. Did I keep my promise today? Not, was I perfect? Not, did I achieve everything? Just, did I keep my promise? If the answer is yes, celebrate it, even if your progress seems small, because small progress is still progress. And what if the answer is no? Don't be discouraged. Everyone has difficult days. Everyone gets tired. Everyone falls behind sometimes. Discipline isn't about never missing a day. It's about refusing to let one missed day become a reason to quit. Imagine you're climbing a long mountain. If you stop to catch your breath, you haven't failed. You simply pause. Then you continue climbing. Life works the same way. One bad day doesn't define you. One missed workout doesn't erase your progress. One skipped English lesson doesn't mean you failed. What matters is your next decision. Do you give up? Or do you begin again? The strongest people aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who keep getting back up. Remember this. You don't need a perfect morning. You don't need a perfect week. You don't even need a perfect year. You only need one disciplined day, repeated many times. That's how confidence grows. That's how habits are built. That's how lives change. The routine I've shared isn't magic. You can change it to fit your own life. Maybe your mornings are busy. Study in the evening. Maybe 10 minutes feels too much. Start with 5. The exact routine doesn't matter. What matters is showing up. Again and again. Because every time you choose discipline over excuses, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become. You may not notice the change today. You may not notice it next week. But one day, you'll look back and realize something incredible. The life you once dreamed about was built by the small decisions you made every ordinary day. And that brings us to one final story. A story about 2 people who started in exactly the same place, but ended up with completely different lives. Imagine 2 friends. Let's call them Alex and Ben. They were the same age. They lived in the same town. They had similar jobs, they earned about the same amount of money, and they shared the same dream. Both wanted a better life. Both wanted to speak English confidently. Both wanted to become healthier, more successful, and more confident. At the beginning, there was almost no difference between them. But then, something small began to happen. Every morning, Alex chose comfort. When the alarm rang, he pressed the snooze button. He told himself, "I'll start tomorrow." After work, he wanted to study English, but he felt tired, so he watched a few videos instead. One evening became another. Another became another. Days turned into months. His dream never disappeared. It simply stayed in the future, always waiting for the right time. Ben wasn't perfect either. Some mornings, he wanted to stay in bed. Some evenings, he felt exhausted. Sometimes he missed a day. Sometimes he made mistakes. But he had made one promise to himself. No matter how busy I am, I'll take one small step every day. Some days, that step was reading one page. Some days, it was learning 5 new English words. Some days, it was simply opening his notebook for 10 minutes. The steps were small, almost invisible, but he kept taking them. One day after another, 1 month after another, 1 year after another. 5 years passed. Alex looked around and realized his life looked almost the same. He still talked about the things he wanted to do. He still waited for motivation. He still believed he would start someday. Ben's life looked very different. He spoke English with confidence. He had built healthy habits. He trusted himself. Not because he was smarter, not because he was luckier, not because life had been easier, but because he kept showing up. Again, and again, and again. That's the quiet power of discipline. It rarely changes your life in one dramatic moment. Instead, it changes your decisions. Those decisions become habits. Those habits become your character. And your character shapes your future. Many people spend their lives waiting for a big opportunity. But your future isn't built by one big moment. It's built by the small choices you make today. The choice to practice instead of procrastinate. The choice to learn instead of scroll. The choice to continue even when nobody is watching. One day, you'll wake up and realize you've become the person you once dreamed of becoming. Not because of one extraordinary decision, but because of hundreds of ordinary ones. So before this video ends, I want to ask you something. Imagine yourself 1 year from today. What would your future self thank you for doing today? Would it be reading 1 page? Learning 5 new English words? Taking a short walk? Making 1 healthy meal? Or finally beginning the dream you've been postponing for so long? Whatever it is, don't wait until tomorrow. Start today, even if your step is small. Because small steps have a remarkable way of leading to extraordinary places. Remember, discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about keeping 1 small promise to yourself every single day. And those promises don't just build better habits. They build a better life. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If this video inspired you, I'd love to hear from you. What's 1 small promise you'll keep today? Write it in the comments below. Your promise might inspire someone else to begin their own journey.
And if you're learning English with this channel, remember this. Every page you read, every sentence you speak, every minute you practice is another step toward the confident English speaker you're becoming. Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep showing up. And I'll see you in the next episode.